The scale of destruction revealed in the Abaco Islands, Hurricane Dorian has now weakened to Category 2 and is inching away from the Bahamas. Turmoil in the UK Parliament as a vote to force a debate to prevent a no-deal Brexit takes place. And more anti-foreigner violence in South Africa. The police responds with rubber bullets. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Doris Polo, and this is From the South. Hurricane Dorian has weakened to Category 2, but it has grown in size as it continues to pummel Grand Bahama Island. While 5 people have been confirmed dead, the government has announced that the death toll is expected to rise and some children are among those killed. The past 24 hours have been pure hurricane hell for the people of northern Bahamas as Dorian continued to lash the islands, leaving behind unprecedented devastation. The images and videos we are seeing of people trapped in their homes as floodwaters seep in are really heartbreaking. At least 13,000 homes are estimated to have been destroyed or left severely damaged. Authorities have urged people to find flotation devices and use hammers to break out of their attics if necessary. There are also prolonged power outages in the capital, Nassau. On the Bahamas Abaco Island, where the hurricane first hit on Sunday, a community called the Mud, a shanty town of Haitian migrants, was virtually obliterated by the storm. It is feared many may have died there. A video shot from a passing car shows Dorian's devastating impact. Roofs torn off, houses flattened, wiped clear off their foundation. Over 20 people injured on Abaco have been airlifted to a hospital in Bahamas capital, Nassau. The U.S. Coast Guard sent in helicopters to evacuate the injured for urgent care. The storm has forced the closure of some airports in Bahamas: Marsh Harbor, South Bimini, North Eleuthera, and Grand Bahama International. United Nations agencies estimate that at least 61,000 people will need food aid after the storm hit the Bahamas. Damage to the island's water system also suggests that fresh water could be a priority in the coming days.
We think that Abaco may require food for more than 14,000 people and Grand Bahama for 47,000 people. One more time, we need to be careful with those numbers. They need to be confirmed after the assessments will be finished in 3 days.
Whilst we will not necessarily see an increase in the number of hurricanes because of climate change, we are likely to see an increase in the very intense ones, such as Dorian.
Residents of Georgia in the U.S. have been complying with mandatory evacuation efforts ahead of Hurricane Dorian's arrival. Although the storm has been downgraded to a Category 2, heavy rain and flooding are expected. Dorian was expected to churn toward Florida before bringing its powerful winds and dangerous surf along the coasts of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina by late Thursday.
We're under a mandatory evacuation, which means it's not a personal choice at this point. We ask people to heed that mandatory evacuation order. Businesses need to be closed and residents need to be heeding that and getting to safety at this point.
Now, as the hurricane season nears its peak this week, another tropical storm has developed and is threatening Mexico. The National Hurricane Center says a disturbance in the Gulf of Mexico has become Tropical Storm Fernand, the 6th named storm of the season. The system currently has sustained winds of 64 kilometers per hour and is located about 160 miles east of La Pesca, Mexico, moving west at 11 kilometers per hour. A tropical storm warning has been issued from Barra del Tordo to the mouth of the Rio Grande River on the U.S. border with Texas. And yet another major storm is brewing. Hurricane Juliet is churning through the eastern Pacific and has developed into Category 3. The storm is currently packing winds of 240 kilometers per hour. Additional rapid strengthening is expected Tuesday and Wednesday before it travels over cooler waters far from the Hawaiian island. It's then expected to weaken late Wednesday through Friday. Shifting gears now, British MPs are about to start voting on Standing Order 24, which would allow the debate on the proposed law to prevent a no-deal Brexit. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is treating this procedural vote as one of no confidence. As such, he intends to expel any Conservative MPs who vote for it and has threatened to call a snap election. Members of Johnson's own Conservative Party are preparing to join opposition lawmakers in the vote to try to force a delay to Britain's exit from the European Union. That is, if he cannot secure a divorce deal with Brussels in the next few weeks. Conservative MP Philip Lee defected to the Liberal Democrats during Johnson's speech to the House of Commons, leaving him without a working majority in Parliament.
The country wants this done and they want the referendum respected. We are negotiating a deal. And though I am confident of getting a deal, we will leave by October the 31st in all circumstances. There will be no further pointless delay. This House has never before voted to force the Prime Minister to surrender such a crucial decision to the discretion of our friends and neighbours overseas. Because what this bill would mean is that unless we agree to the terms of our friends and partners, they would be able to keep us in the EU for as long as they want and on their terms. And I urge, therefore, this House to reject this bill tonight so that we can get the right deal for our country, deliver Brexit and take the whole country forward. And I commend this statement, Mr. Speaker, to the House. Thank you.
No deal, Mr. Speaker, will mean food shortages, reduced medical supplies and chaos at our ports. Not me saying that. The government's own leaked analysis says, and it warns of chaos all across the board. Today, we had expected a publication of the government's no-deal preparations. This government is hiding from scrutiny, hiding from the people, and trying to hide us from their true intentions. This isn't just a government in chaos, but a government of cowardice.
Now, as the debate rages on, scores of people gathered outside the UK Parliament to protest both in favour and against Brexit. Some protesters held signs in reference to Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his advisor Dominic Cummings, reading, "Cummings the despot, BJ the puppet, stop Brexit," while others carried banners reading, "Brexit now." We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Welcome back. Citizens in Venezuela have condemned recently discovered terrorist plans by the far-right opposition that were foiled by the government. They say all Venezuelans must place their hopes on dialogue and not violence to resolve the issues the nation faces.
At this community, located in Block 40 of the January 23rd neighbourhood in Caracas, boys and girls often take part in a government-sponsored vacation programme. There's also cultural activities carried out by the community for people of all ages.
This is the 6th year we've held this program, free of charge. We have over 200 participants.
But amidst steps from where the children are enjoying these activities, authorities discovered an explosive device.
We are incredibly worried about these terrorist attempts aimed at our community. In our neighborhood, there are over 5,000 people. It's hard to believe these terrorists want to attack us without a care of the consequences.
Another 2 explosive devices were also discovered by authorities. According to the government, this was one of the targets of the attacks. The other, the Justice Palace, a strategic point near 2 bus terminals, a number of shopping centres and most of the city's courtrooms. Citizens have strongly condemned these terrorist plans that sought to push for yet another coup against President Nicolás Maduro.
We are glad they got caught.
You can see that Venezuela's intelligence service works because they are not able to catch us off guard. You simply cannot act against your own people.
This would have been a major disaster because a lot of people move through here. It's a shopping center. Violence will not solve anything. Violence begets violence.
The government says it will present the evidence to international bodies to demand that hostile governments, like Colombia's under Ivan Duque, involved in the plans, be made responsible.
We all must defend our nation's integrity. Conflicts cannot be resolved with violence, and we must be glad about the work of our intelligence service that have proven to be on our side and have made trends to defuse terrorist attempts.
Meanwhile, President Maduro has announced that over 8 million people have signed a petition against the US blockade. He says this is a sign of a people united for peace and sovereignty.
In Guatemala, the UN commission that fought political corruption in the country is officially leaving after the outgoing president, Jimmy Morales, terminated its mission. Guatemala's president-elect Alejandro Giammattei has supported the move. The International Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala, or CICIG, has worked together with Guatemalan investigators and prosecutors to expose multi-billion-dollar corruption networks. Over the last 12 years, the commission put 2 former presidents and dozens of officials in prison for corruption-related crimes. It also investigated Morales and his family for corruption allegations. In other news, the aftermath of looting is visible in South Africa's capital, Johannesburg, as the streets are littered with rocks, bricks and burned debris. The financial capital was hit by a new wave of anti-foreigner violence as nationals blame immigrants for high unemployment. Mobs took over the township overnight, burning and looting the shops in their path. Rubber bullets were fired by police to disperse the crowds. A government statement revealed more than 110 people were arrested. Police are scheduled to meet with community leaders later on Tuesday. The new wave of xenophobic attacks was reportedly sparked by the killing of a Nigerian taxi driver last week in Pretoria.
It's no problem. So like that, 6 months, 3 months is gone, again it's broken, government no action, so how to standing there? Who give you life? Just last night, police, I call police is open my gate, I coming out. If you know police not coming, is a meaning is dead. Me and my uncle is 10 guy is standing there at this house.
Our correspondent Matuba Malachi has the details from Johannesburg.
The attacks on migrants here in South Africa is not a completely new phenomenon. We've seen it in 2008 when it was thrust into international headlines when we saw a Mozambican man being stabbed, and that image remains with many people who want to visit South Africa. But fast forward to 2019, we are seeing similar events unfolding in Pretoria, the capital city, and the economic capital city of the country, Johannesburg, where shops owned by migrants have been targeted, and most of them have since been shut down, fearing the violence that's been ongoing for the past few days. And there's been silence from government until Tuesday. That's when President Cyril Ramaphosa broke his silence and condemned the violence, especially targeted at migrants here in the country, and calling for calm. The defense minister has joined the president, calling for copycats, people who are spreading this similar violence or similar acts of violence in other parts of the country, and insisting that the intelligence of the country is still intact, even though all the police have been doing since these incidences have been erupting, they have not been preemptive rather, but they've been reacting to what's been happening, and they have not been able to quell any of the violence in time to stop the damage that we see in Johannesburg and in Pretoria. Police Minister Begitele has also said that he will redeploy more police officers. Actually, in fact, as I speak, there's a police helicopter right behind me patrolling and trying to see the hotspots of violence here in Johannesburg. However, the migrants still feel unsafe in South Africa because of the ongoing violence that keeps on coming on and off throughout this year, because it hasn't started now, but it's been happening throughout the year, because when there are service delivery protests, they become the target of criminal acts, and the government is falling short of calling it xenophobic attacks because they say there is no sign of xenophobia, but majority of South Africans believe what's taking place in South Africa is xenophobia. It's back to you, studio.
Our correspondent Matuba Malaji with that report. August was Women's Month in South Africa in honor of the 1956 Women's March against unjust apartheid laws. Now, decades later, women gathered in Parliament at the end of the month in solidarity against gender-based violence and inequality.
The first Women's Charter was adopted in April 1954, which was reaffirmed in 1994. Now, 25 years later, the issues of inequality for women remain as relevant today as they were then. Women from all sectors of society gathered in Parliament in what is called the first Women's Parliament and to review the Women's Charter. The Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces says this charter should also include women across the globe.
Wars, destruction, all of it is usually the women and the children that are suffering the most. So how do we as South African women position ourselves to in solidarity with the rest of the world, the Venezuelan women that are the ones that are suffering because there is no resources, there is no commodities and things that they can use because of a battle that is not their battle.
Women raised concerns over safety of women and that there seems to be no serious punishment for men who continue to commit these hideous crimes.
Women are coming from a background of triple oppression, and they are coming from a very unequal and patriarchal society. So we really need to make sure 25 years, it's a bit long, but I think it's the correct time to do it now and to make sure henceforth the voice of women will be heard in whatever we do for them.
The conference was the launching pad to start a national conversation to review the Women's Charter through sustained dialogue and interactive discussions with women across the country. Johan Abrams for Telesur in Cape Town.
We'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back. Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, has dispelled allegations claiming that she intends to resign from her job amidst violent opposition protests.
From the very beginning till now, I have never tendered a resignation to the Central People's Government. I have not even contemplated to discuss a resignation with the Central People's Government. The choice of not resigning is my own choice, okay? But if you want to understand, because in a private session, I just attempted to explain that as an individual, given the very difficult circumstances, it was an easy choice to leave. But I told myself repeatedly in the last 3 months that I and my team should stay on to help Hong Kong.
And as violence continues to escalate, spokespersons for the Chinese government have said China will not sit and watch if the situation worsens. They also reminded foreign governments that they have no reason to ever interfere in China's internal affairs.
The central government will never allow the Hong Kong issue to continue unabated. If the situation gets worse and out of control for the Tsai government, threatens national sovereignty and safety, the Chinese central government will never sit and watch.
I want to warn those Western representatives that Hong Kong is a part of China, and the Hong Kong issue doesn't allow any foreign intervention. They can play their games everywhere else and live devastation, but not in Hong Kong, land of China. This won't pass, it's a pipe dream. They need to wake up.
Shifting gears now, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has said his country will never hold bilateral talks with the U.S. as long as the sanctions against his country continues. But he added that if the sanctions are lifted, the U.S. can join multilateral talks between Iran and other parties.
We do not and never had an intention of mutual talks with the U.S. This has been the truth during the past year and a half and many years before. If the U.S. removes all sanctions, no matter if they return to the nuclear deal or not, it's not very important for us. What matters to us are sanctions. If the U.S. lifts all sanctions, it will be possible again to hold 5+1 talks with the U.S. presence again.
Police in Guinea-Bissau intelligence operation by the police. Authorities say the shipment came from Colombia and was on its way to Al-Qaeda militants in North Africa.
This is the largest amount seized in the country. We are talking about and a half also able to partially dismantle and at this moment we have already been able to arrest 4 Guinea-Bissau.
The German has arrived migrant center controlled by the police. It's a measure taken by the government to deal with new migrants arriving to Spain's shores.
By Spanish.
The minister calls it an extension of the dungeons in which they are detained. There are now minors and women, and the issue of minors, although the police say they are not minors until a test is done, the truth is that they were, because we have seen women were pregnant.
Torre is 24 years old and he reached a beach in Almeria. He has spent the last 72 hours in police custody despite not committing any crime. He's now waiting at a Red Cross center in migratory Northern Europe.
We arrived at the down, we were very tired and we found some Spanish citizens who offered to help us. And then the civil guard came for us. They saw us, they called the bus and they took us to the police station in Almeria.
The Spanish Red Cross and the government have opened the centers for shelter, emergency and derivation, spaces where migrants that cannot be deported will be welcomed during 15 days prior to their asylum or transit.
When they reach us after 72 hours in custody of the police, their cases are sent to us. And we take care of them. After the 72 hours, we analyze the process for each case.
In 2018, Spain was the Mediterranean country with a greater migratory flow, But so far in 2019, more than 14,000 migrants have arrived in Patera on the Spanish coast, and that is 40% less than the same months in 2018.
That brings us to the end of this news brief. You can find these and join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.